We said that those that disagreed oftentimes found themselves pushed out of the colony. And the two big dissenters that we mentioned were Roger Williams and Ann Hutchinson. And the Gateway soccer people are leaving right now. There they go. There they go. The World Wide Web, in a moment, will see the Gateway soccer people pass by. There they go. Right there. Leading the way, ahead of fire ways. There you go. Oh boy, is this going to be good. DeFazio, this is going to be beyond good. So anyways, Mulcairn, we were talking about these dissenters. And Williams' dissent leads to the establishment of Rhode Island. Remember, Williams was kicked out of Massachusetts Bay. He went to live with the Narragansett Indians, and there he established a town, Providence. Providence became the center of what subsequently became a colony, Rhode Island. Hutchinson, what was Hutchinson's, what was her argument? I mean, she gets kicked out too. But what did Hutchinson say that was so disturbing? Is anybody besides the instructor? Go ahead, dear Mulcairn. Pardon me? Oh, you are correct that she heard God speak to her in immediate voice. And he spoke to her about, at least by her testimony, he spoke to her about the nature of salvation. Are you saved by works or are you saved by grace? Yes. Yes. She said, listen, if you are saved by grace, you are saved by grace. It doesn't matter what you do. And sometimes this is called antinomianism, without the law. There is no law. In your textbook, there is a discussion about the Glorious Revolution in England and the effect that the Glorious Revolution had on New England. We did not talk about that in class, but there are some questions on the test about that. So that's a tip, Ken Dick, to make sure you read that. So as I said a moment ago, in your textbook there is a discussion about the Glorious Revolution in England and the effect that the Glorious Revolution had on New England. There are some questions on the test about that. After we did New England, we went to the middle colonies, New York and Pennsylvania. And we talked a little bit about their settlement. We said both were proprietary colonies. One was a proprietary grant that Charles granted to his brother, James, the Duke of York. Hey, what was significant about our story about New York? We said there was one kind of interesting element of that story. Go ahead, dear Jowsey. James II, right? It was granted to James II, yes. Yeah. Yeah. I'm a professional, I know these things, yes.
I think it's the York person who like to go into Dutch or whatever. And they just
Well, you know what I was actually looking for, dear Jowsey, was the Dutch. Yes. Yeah. Yes. The land was granted to Charles's brother, James II, Duke of York. And the land was previously claimed by the Dutch. And so James had to take it from him, which he does quite easily. And it results in, sort of a British takeover of a Dutch colony. And that kind of, is influential. I mean, there are lots of different people living in the New Netherlands that was eventually seized by the British and made a British colony, New York. And we talked about the multicultural nature of New Amsterdam, which soon became New York City. Now, in Pennsylvania, what was significant was that William Penn, who received the proprietary grant, was a Quaker. And we talked a little, Mulcairn, about the nature of Quakerism and why Quakers were considered to be sort of Christianity gone mad, and how Penn envisioned Pennsylvania as being a place where persecuted Quakers could practice their religion freely. But we also mentioned that Penn is going to make Pennsylvania a place where kind of all people can practice their religion freely. And we mentioned that Pennsylvania attracted all religious faiths and denominations, and it had liberal government and amicable relations with the Native Americans. And so, you know, we discussed the sort of nature of the middle colonies, Pennsylvania and New York. Now, after discussing the nature of the middle colonies, then we went back to the Chesapeake region, and we talked about the labor force there and how tobacco defined the economy. And that got us into that whole conversation about the unhealthy nature of living there, blended families, and the need for labor. And so we talked about that at some length. We said, look, eventually in the Chesapeake region, the planters that went there needed to acquire labor if they were going to expand their acreages. At first, they do so using the indentured servants. And just for fun, Flick, what was an indentured servant?
Those who gave themselves for free passage to America. Like slave labor.
Go ahead, continue. I'm sorry.
They worked for people in America to gain passage.
So you are saying to me, dear Flick, that an indentured servant was undoubtedly a European who, in return for passage to America and some subsequent freedom dues, and maybe room and board and other things, agreed to work for someone for a period of time. Typically, what was the term of an indenture? How long? 7 years. So they would work on plantations for plantation owners for a 7-year period in return. And what was the big payoff dues that they wanted? What did the indentures want? Go ahead, your book. Land. They would hope to get land, and then they would acquire more. Oh, incidentally, what was the head right system? What was the head right system? It is mentioned in your book, and it is on the test. Go ahead, dear Taylor. Yes, the head right system, which is mentioned in your book and on the test, was a system where Virginia and Maryland said, if you bring over an indentured servant, we will give you the right to buy 50 acres of land. So if you bring people over, you can buy land. And we spent a lot of time talking about why the planters in Virginia and Maryland used indentured servants rather than African slaves at first. And one of the points we made, dear Parker, is that they used indentured servants rather than slaves because Virginia and Maryland were unhealthy places to live. And so people died in large numbers. If you purchased a slave and used that slave to work on your plantation and they died, you lost your investment. Slaves were more expensive than indentured servants. They had some level of risk associated with it. But then we talked about how sort of a confluence of factors results in a transformation, right? From indentured servitude labor to slave labor. And one of the things that we mentioned that contributes to this is Bacon's Rebellion. How did Bacon's Rebellion contribute to this whole transformation that occurred in Virginia between plantation owners using white indentured servants and slave labor? How did Bacon... Well, go ahead, dear Meredith. Is it your 17th birthday today? Yes, go ahead.
Well, after Bacon's Rebellion, people started getting a little weary of the indentured.
That's a pretty good explanation, dear Meredith. What she said, for those of you that did not hear her, is in the aftermath of Bacon's Rebellion, which was 1676, plantation owners and the leadership of Virginia became a little wary of indentured servants, former indentured servants, who would not be able to get land. Because remember, Bacon is going to lead 1,000 former indentured servants who basically overthrow the government of the colony for a period of time. And so the question of, okay, if we keep importing indentured servants, what are these people going to do when they no longer are indentured servants became an issue. And slaves seem to be a more manageable labor force. So in addition, along with health and vitality improving, you know, indentured servants